Today I'd like to introduce a special guest. I was actually marking a assignment, a motivational speaking course that we deliver, and I was marking an assignment. And when you hear inspirational stories, I'm quite fortunate being in my field for a long time as a speaker and as a presenter. And I've come across a number of inspirational stories, and this story really struck me reading it. It was a really, really powerful story. A young man making his way in the world and has a rare genetic condition amongst many things, and I don't pretend to understand the condition, but equally a powerful story because James, who's going to speak to us shortly, has sort of kept himself productive and studied university, and I think that he's going to become a great motivational speaker one day, that's for sure. And I want to sort of share the story. So James, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I think people are going to get a lot out of it, in the sense that obviously I'm not sort of implying medical advice, but awareness of the rare condition you do have, and obviously I think to draw strength from yourself in terms of your resilience in going for uni and the backdrop of having this sort of condition. So thank you for joining us, James. Can you sort of tell the audience a little bit about what your condition is and how it's impacted you, please?
Well, thank you, Jim, for that introduction. Yeah, I've got a rare genetic disease, and it's called the perforin gene defect. I was also born with primary immunodeficiency. 2003, I underwent the life. That's also my road in the transit, but it's actually called mortality, and it's because I contracted. It's got about a 50% more to get a lot of nerve damage. It's shortened to actually into a wheelchair. So I've had to do a lot of things. I had to do a lot of physiotherapy as a child. This at age 12. By 13, I did so much physio, and I tried so hard. I was playing football competitively again from ages of 13 to 16. I went through high school and I was pretty fine. I didn't really have any problems. But then when I got to about 17, 18, my condition started to develop further. And I started to get rheumatic conditions like arthritis. I developed a condition known as lymphedema as well, which is really, it's the one that I hate the most because it's what a lot of old people get. And there's just recognition of lymphedema, and I don't like that. But I have arthritis, lymphedema. This last year, the reason I decided to get into motor is because people with immunodeficiency can contract stomach viruses, and I contracted one called winter vomiting flu, which is also called norovirus. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. A problem in immunodeficient people because once they get norovirus, they can't get rid of it, and sometimes it can live in a host for up to 8 years. I've currently been living with norovirus for about 3 to 4 years. My healthcare professionals suspect it might be a bit longer, but as a result of that, I've gone through periods in my life where I've got severely malnutritioned. And in January this year, I was admitted into hospital with severe malnutrition, and I was in there for 6 weeks. I was put onto something called TPN, which is total parental nutrition, which there's a video about that on my channel, which I'll let you know about later, which explains what that is. But since then, I ended up in a wheelchair again in hospital because my lymphatic system stopped to work, and I gained 15 kilograms of fluid on my lower body. And it was very painful. I was on morphine 3 times a day. Not nice at all. Really, really, really bad times. But I've got through it. I've worked hard on myself. And a big part of that has been motivational speaking, which is why I sought out the course that Jim puts on, which is a really good course, which you should check out as well. And I've been slowly working my way through that whilst getting myself better and fighting back. And this week, recently, I just returned to work on my graduate scheme. So, you know, when you hit these milestones and you hit these accomplishments, you've really got to celebrate them because it makes you feel good. So I'm celebrating at the moment. I'm back at work. I'm feeling good. I'm healthiest I've been. But all that has been down. This recovery has been down to looking after myself again, because I really lost my way and I stopped looking after myself. I stopped doing my medication. I stopped going to doctor's appointments. I stopped having my self-respect. I stopped loving myself, really. And I think that's really important advice for anyone, is to always love yourself, always put yourself first and look after yourself, because you only get one body to live in. You only get one life, you know, so make the most of it. And I think you'll find that the mind and the body are so closely linked. Whenever I was down, stressed and depressed, my stomach was terrible. But at the moment now, I'm doing my exercise, regular exercise, I'm studying, I'm keeping my brain active. And my physical health has been the best it's been in years. So that's just a bit of background to my condition. My conditions, they're ongoing. A lot of them are terminal. They're not going to get any better. They're not going to go. But it's about managing my conditions and living the best life that I can based on myself.
Yeah, no, it's you know, putting that into perspective is, you mentioned there that you sort of back on the back to work on the graduate scheme, and with the sort of backdrop of what you were going through to get through university, it would have taken obviously a lot of, you know, determination and focus. That's for sure. And, you know, I suppose in life, life can be fragile. It's uncertain to a certain extent for all of us in one way. But obviously yourself, you know, you sort of had the diagnosis. And in terms of the diagnosis, how did they? Because it's such a rare condition and unknown condition. I mean, did it take them a long time to establish what was wrong? Or because, I mean, the thing is, James, there's so many different conditions that sort of have so many similarities, and I think it's not easy in terms of always getting the diagnosis, you know, quickly, one would think, with all these sort of conditions that have got similarities. But for yourself, did it take a while to get a diagnosis, so at least you knew what you were dealing with, or was it something that sort of they did pretty quickly?
Well, the first realised I had a problem was about 18 months old, and I started to get chicken pox like any usual toddler or young child would get. But they realised there was a problem, and the chicken pox, it didn't go away, and it started to get really blotchy on my skin. And I have a lot of facial scarring now on my arms, my face, my legs, and that came from chicken pox. So that's when they first realised that my immune system wasn't working properly. To stop my skin being so bad, they gave me a lot of steroid medication, which is anti-inflammatories, and that got it under control. So the scars and the blotchiness and the redness in your skin was so prevalent. But I used to play rugby when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I won player of the tournament 3 or 4 times. I was man player of the season one season. And I first started to realise something was wrong with my legs when I would make a break through the line and I'd trip up over my feet. It was literally as simple as I went to get out of bed one morning at 8 years old, and I fell over and I was like, damn, my legs are not working. I went down to London to Great Ormond Street Hospital. I'm sure quite a lot of people have heard of Great Ormond Street, one of the most famous children's hospitals in the world. And I remember being in a room with some doctors, and they sat me down and they sat me on a chair. They started to, you know, knock your knees and test your reflexes.
Yeah.
And there were no reflexes in my legs. And then they got my feet and they wanted to pull them up. And they said, James, can you lift your foot up? And I said, no, I can't do it. And they asked me to walk in a straight line, and I couldn't do that either. And so they said, James needs to go for a brain scan right now. They sent me down for a brain scan, and they noticed lots of speckles on my brain. And this is where they found the nerve damage. And then they had a meeting with my parents, and they said, James, we think he's got HLH. We have got a protocol to solve this. It's a bone marrow transplant, but he's going to have chemotherapy. It's very risky. And my dad said, well, how risky are we talking? And the doctor, Dr. Paul there, is a very famous doctor. He said, we've done 20 transplants so far and 18 children have lived. And my dad said, so there's a 10% chance he could die. And he said, yes, but every case is different. But if you want your son to survive, this is the only thing that you're going to be able to do. So that sort of brain illness, that diagnosis was straightforward. They knew what to do. They had the protocol. They went in there. There was a few problems in my transplantation. But overall, I'm alive and I'm here today. And that's the main thing. You know, I have a good standard of life compared to some people. Very good. I've got a very supportive family. I have lots of friends. You know, I know some people who've got much more debilitating conditions than I have. And I think as long as you can get on, go to work, drive a car, have a girlfriend, you know, go out partying, do all these cool things, what some people can't do and they'll never do. What do you have to moan about? You don't have anything to complain about. You have a good standard of life and you should make the most of it.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know, it's you know, a fascinating, strong perspective to have, and I think that I think one way to look at things is there's some things sometimes we have this adversity, and whether the adversity could be physical injury, condition, and it can sort of it can prevent us from doing a number of things, but there's still a lot of things we can do, and I think focusing on what we can do is a good place to start, and that's certainly your perspective. That said, that's not undermining people who are going through adversity, and you know, many people have suffered adversity. I certainly have as well, and sometimes there are certain things we can sort of focus on, the things we can't do, but then we can also focus on what we can do. But you know, there are days, I'm sure we're all human, where you know you kind of wonder and that sort of stuff. But in terms of the peripherin and you know so from the point of view that they did that MRI scan you, James? Is that what they did? They did an MRI scan and saw like was it did you say was it I didn't quite catch, was it lesions that they found, or they found that there was some sort of infection in the brain?
What they did is they did a brain scan at Great Ormond Street Hospital when they suspected that I had this hemophagocytic.
Okay.
And
yeah.
On the brain scan, they found that there was a lot of nerve damage on my brain, and that was presenting itself in the fact that I couldn't walk and that my legs were damaged. You see. Yes.
Yeah. And like, have they sort of carried on monitoring that? Do you sort of monitor that and sort of see if there's any
since that, I developed a condition called peripheral neurothapy in your legs, which is basically just nerve damage.
Yes.
I mean, I've been doing exercise and trying to do physical activity. I exercise regularly. It's very good for your mind and body. I've been doing that ever since because I just think that is such an important thing to do. Not only because it's good for you, but make the most of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure a lot of people have been in conditions, you might not necessarily been as serious as that, but where you have had the ability to walk, either because you've been bedridden or poorly, or you've not felt like it, or you've been depressed and you just can't bring yourself to do it. You know, we've all been in them positions where you're deprived of being able to do something. It's really nice to acknowledge and be thankful for them feelings when you can do them again. I always give thanks, and I always stop and take a moment and think, wow, I'm so happy. Like now, I'm so happy that I can do a YouTube interview. I didn't lose my ability to speak. I've still got my voice. These things are really important. Take your time and be thankful for what you can do. But I completely understand what you're saying about, you know, a lot of people have been through hardships, and I don't always like to talk about what's happened to me because some people might think, oh, you're trying to one up me or something like that. But Do you know, I always say to people when they say, you've been through so much, I don't know how you do it. It doesn't matter what I've been through. Your life is your own life. That's what's important to you. You know, I'm not living your life. You're living your life. These struggles that you have, they're important to you. My best friend, his mother died when he was young. And I admire him so much, and he's such a strong person to me. Well, the twins, they both are really strong guys. But I couldn't say to them, I understand what you've been through, because I don't. But I understand you've had a struggle, and on that level we connect. Do you see what I'm saying? But, you know, everybody has hardships in life, but no one hardship is ever the same.
Of course.
I get my strength from other people's hardships because I've experienced them myself. And it's not what happened in life, because things are going to happen. You can't get away from that fact. Things are going to happen. Things might take turns for the worst. It's how you deal with them. It's how you overcome, adapt forward, and keep carrying on. That's what's important.
No, definitely, it's a good sentiment, and I think for me, definitely, I sort of look at things existentially in terms of getting meaning out of situations and think, okay, let's sort of whatever that meaning might be, and you know, just sort of getting out there and sort of sharing an experience, or just getting out there doing the best we can in the situation we're in. And I think you make a good point there. It's very difficult to compare one's life, because we all are going to go through things in life at some stage. Wherever we are and whatever the situation is, it's being and just doing the best we can at every moment. I think that's a really powerful perspective. And I think that, you know, you mentioned earlier about, you know, looking after yourself and that sort of stuff. And I think it's a difficult thing. And I mean, the internet's great in one sense, James. There's a lot of information out there. We can sort of look and learn. But on the other side of things, there's a lot of stuff out there that I wouldn't say isn't great, but I mean, I'm not a medical person. I don't pretend to know. I've sort of studied the mind for many years, and now I'm sort of going back into you know, learning more in the field of neuroscience. And for me, a lot of these things are multifactorial. There generally isn't. It's very hard to find causal links between certain things, but equally, there's information out there that sometimes suggests, you know, one thing and you know, can help. But have you found anything that has been useful for you to sort of to help you, not so much with your condition, but just generally feeling better, you know, just well-being? Has there been anything for yourself that's maybe eating wise, or just anything that you've read, any literature that you read, and any sort of insight in terms of, I mean, to get through university, to do the course that you did at university with the backdrop of what you're going through is pretty good going. You know, I've studied many courses at university, and it's not always easy. But equally, you know, it can bring stress, it can bring, you know, difficulties. But have you ever found anything that sort of that's worked for you in terms of, you know, helping you in terms of, say, mindset or just general well-being? Or
yes, actually, after this period of illness, what I spent in the hospital in January this year for 6 weeks, I started to see a therapist in the hospital. Now, mental health in the UK is massive now. But I tell you, I've gone through all this as a kid, and I've seen a child psychologist a few times. But apart from that, I've never really had any help with the mental side of my problems. I have time. I said, I'm going to take all the help I can get. And I was seeing a therapist in the hospital 3 times per week. And since then, I saw a therapist for 8 sessions after. And they put me onto this course called Mindfulness. Yeah. And it's absolutely brilliant. And it's about being aware of yourself in the moment, on purpose, without judgment. And it really teaches you how to thoughts that might intrude in your mind that you don't want, that might cause negative or unwanted feelings, how to just let them float away and stop judging yourself so harshly all the time. That's one thing that I've found that's really helped me. Mindfulness has been really, really good. I'm so much more relaxed and rounded now because of it. It's been really, really good. CBD oil Now,
Okay.
I've used CBD oil, which you can buy in the UK. Now, I buy mine from a vaping shop called SMKD. And it's made in Colorado Springs, California. Now, that's a naturally anti-inflammatory. So for me, with autoimmune diseases, it's like the perfect thing. It's non-psychoactive, so obviously it wouldn't get you stoned or anything like that, which I wouldn't want that anyway. But it's really good for calming you down, getting you a better night's sleep.
Yeah.
And I think that's another key thing is your sleep, because when I was really sick, it's really difficult to get good nap and things like that. It's not good for your mind or your body at all. So I would say the CBD, practicing mindfulness apps you can get for it now. I know that Calm's one of them, which I've got. It's called Calm. That's really nice. It's like on YouTube, Jimmy, like so many adverts are about mind. There's a reason for that. It works.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
evidence-backed. It's scientific. And I'm telling you, I've got 3 sessions of mindfulness left. And I've loved it. I've met some great... The other thing is, when you go to these mindfulness groups, you meet loads of like-minded people. So the social aspect to that is great as well. That really benefits you. But my recovery has been love and support from my family, and I know that's not be important for them.
So just breaking up slightly there, Joe. Just no, it's some really fascinating insights, and certainly I'm a big advocate of mindfulness as well. I think it's great, being in the moment. The only moment we have is now, and sometimes we can sort of spend a lot of time thinking about the future, about the past, and the reality is the only one we have now. So I'm a big advocate of mindfulness. I think it certainly has its place, and you mentioned what's worked for you. I mean, what works for you might not work for somebody else. We've got to find their own thing, I think. But I guess the moral of the story is sort of to be proactive in one sense and just try the best we can to find we can. I mean, the danger is, my concern sometimes is, James, in these situations, that that the vulnerability of someone who isn't feeling great, whatever the condition is, it could be a mental health, it could be physical, whatever it is. Sometimes there's vulnerability. There's so much information out there on the internet that it's easy to sort of go on a wild goose chase and sort of, do I do this? Do I do a plant-based? Do I do fruit diet? Do I take CBD? And I think for me, there's always that sort of concern. The CBD oil you mentioned there, the antipsychotic, I think it's one of the things really. Is people got to make their own, judgment. I've used in the past for when I travel. It helps me sometimes to adjust to the time zone where I am and sleep. But obviously, in saying that, it's sort of each to their own. I mean, you mentioned there anti-inflammatory. Has been in research papers talked about as being a potential link with certain, mental health areas, but that's another story for another day. But it's quite fascinating in terms of, just an insight in terms of, where you go. And so the university course, congratulations, and that's, a great course to have under your belt. And what does what's the future for you, James? What's the next steps for you? I mean, you sort of have got this sort of eclectic mix of experiences that are quite unique. You've got the academia behind you. Now, where do you see yourself now in terms of your next steps, at least in the professional sense? Sort of, what's your goal?
So, what my plan is to do is, at the moment, finish your motivational speaking course, what I started with you. I want to get that done. I want my certificate. That course has taught me so much about emotions, reading body language, and all these sorts of really interesting things. It's so much more than just how do you start a speaking business. It's so much more than that. So I'm going to, first of all, get that qualification. Secondly, I would really like to get an NLP practitioner qualification. So when I've done this one, I'm going to be looking to do that one. When I've got that, that should take me about 3 to 6 months. When I've got that, I'm going to start to write a business plan because I'd like to do a life coaching business. And in this, I will be producing content from my YouTube channel, medical conditions, how I've dealt with it. Hopefully that could help other people. With a consultancy work, when I get down to the academic side of it, the NLP, which I think is really, really thought-provoking and interesting, how you use language and things like that to influence people. When I can do that and I can, I've got that qualified backing, then I can start to really advise and help other people who might be in similar situations to myself. I would like to start doing that as a consultancy work and hopefully get speaking arrangements as well. But yeah, when I do after I've done the NLP, I'll start to write my business plan for that. In the future, I would like to take up speaking and things like that, like full time, really. But further down the line, this is something that I've thought I'd like to do is write a book as well. I'd like to write a book about what it's like to go through a serious medical child, because in a lot of ways it's seriously affected me, but in a lot of ways it's been the making of me too. And as bad as it's been, as hard as for my family, I won't swap it, because I wouldn't be this person if it wasn't for that future YouTube channel a bit more, produce some more content. There's a few videos on there at the moment, but I mean, I started it in the beginning of this year. It was so swollen because I was on a lot of steroids and I just looked fat, and I promise you I'm not that fat. But it's gone down much better, looks much better now. So yeah, I'm going to start doing producing some more content soon. I'm writing some stuff for my blog as well. Hopefully, I'm just going to keep doing that, keep chugging along, keep going back to work, get working my way back into full-time employment. And one of my favourite speakers, he's died now, God bless him, Jim Rohn.
Yeah.
Something that he said that really stuck with me is go work full-time and make your living and work part-time on your fortune. And I think that is such a good concept and way of thinking to have, because let's be honest, 90% of people are not doing the things that they want to do in life right now, but it doesn't dedicate a little bit of time to it. So Jim Rohn advised 15 hours a week part-time on the one thing that you want to do. Maybe it's a side business, maybe you're a busker and it's singing, or maybe you want to get really good at sports and you're doing 5-side football. So 10 to 15 hours while you work on your living. So full time necessarily, but what you want to do, you can still work on your fortune. You can still go to work on that every day, and that's what I'm going to plan on doing.
Yeah, no, it's inspirational stuff. And just briefly, James, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, do you have you've got the YouTube channel, the blog? So you sort of mentioned your blog and YouTube channel, so people can sort of people want to sort of see some of your content. And
yeah, that's no problem. So early this year, I started learn how to start. It's called www.northernacity.com. Like northern, as in Northern England, northern, and then cross between northern tenacity. So it's Northernacity. I'll send you I'll send you it over in an email, Jim. Anyway, you can pop a link in.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the name of my YouTube channel as well, Northernacity. I'll be putting some more content on there, and I'll also, if you find the channel, you'll be able to see like my Instagram, Twitter, everything like that I use with that. And there'll be an email address on there as well. So if anybody wants to contact me, I mean, I've got a video on my channel about TPN, which is total parental nutrition. It's a medication that I'm having to do at the moment. I've been on it for 2 years now. Somebody got in touch with me on my videos the other day and said, "Oh, I was telling my friend about it, and I really enjoyed your video and good outlook on life, and that really gave me a boost. So if anybody out there, if they see this and, you know, they like the story and everything, they want to get in touch, that's fine by me.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a powerful. Yeah, no, so it's certainly a, you know, a really powerful story, and I think that, you know, it's a story, you know, a lot of determination and dedication and focus. And I think one thing's for sure, James, sometimes we sort of like, you know, go about our daily jobs and business and do what we do, and we sometimes forget that people out there, you know, are having to go through things. And I think sometimes there's sort of people go a little bit more kinder to each other too. And, you know, sometimes whatever it might be, you know, getting on a bus or a train or going to the store, and sometimes we forget that people are sort of, you know, life isn't easy. Life has its challenges, you know, and I think that a little bit more compassion out there would go a long way in terms of, you know, sometimes people are going through battles that no one would ever know, you know, and certainly in certain situations we can sort of not realise that, you know, life can be challenging. But on the other side of things, I think you mentioned there the mindfulness stuff is really, really important, because we really make the most of every situation we've got. That is a big, big message for me, and I'm sure. Well, I'm you know, confident that you will become a motivational speaker. That's for sure, because it's a powerful story, and as I said, it's a very eclectic mix of experiences and knowledge, and, you know, getting through the university, and it's so versatile and transferable. You know, certainly for people who are going through university and finding it tough, and sort of hearing your story and how you got through can certainly give people that sort of inspiration they need to say, you know what, okay, I can sort of do this. And, you know, we all have bad days, and you made a good point there. It's not about comparing, but equally sometimes you can look at people and think, you know what, I can draw strength from that, and think, you know, it's easy to think that people out there have you know, everything perfect and going their way, but it's not always the case. So I found it a really inspirational conversation, James. I want to thank you for coming on board the show, and you know, I sort of look forward to seeing how you know, you go on and do, and I'm sure, you know, you'll go on to make an impact, just as the likes of Jim Rohn did at some point. You have a powerful story there, and I certainly, you know, wish you all the best, and you know, enjoy working together in terms of the motivational side. If I can sort of, you know, give any input into any experience, I'm happy to give insights into that area. So thanks again, James. Really appreciate you coming on board, and I wish you all the best.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.